Toy fans, let's rank some Iron Man. Hey Toy fans, Rob here. Let's get these guys out of the box and see what they're all about. Hey Toy fans, Rob here, back with another tier list, and this time we are looking at Iron Man. I had done a poll on X not too long ago, asking you guys to tell me which figures you wanted me to do a tier list for. Wolverine had been part of that ranking, Rogue, Juggernaut, and Iron Man, and at the end of the day, Iron Man did win that poll, but by the time that answer had finally come through, and then that he finally won, I'd already started prepping for the Wolverine tier video that you guys have already seen on my channel. So now I'm making good on Iron Man. We have Hulkbuster here. So a couple of ground rules before we get started. This particular tier list is going to focus primarily on Marvel Legends figures, and it will feature both comic and MCU-inspired figures. Now, I do not have every Iron Man figure that was ever made. That would just be a Herculean task to pull off, but I do have a lot of them, so I think we're going to have fun going through this video. But the first thing I wanted to mention before we get started, the only Iron Man figure on this tier list to not actually be made by Toy Biz or Hasbro, or not even part of the Marvel Legends line, is this Marvel Select Hulkbuster figure. The reason we're starting with him is because he is the reason you guys are not going to see the Toy Biz Hulkbuster Iron Man or the recent Hasbro comic-inspired Hulkbuster Iron Man figure, because I've got this guy. Diamond Select made a really great Hulkbuster figure a number of years ago, probably close to 10 at this point, and he had nice metallic red paints. He didn't have the superposability of a Marvel Legends type figure. His fingers don't move. His head doesn't even really rotate, even though it's supposed to. But he has all of the points of articulation where it counts for the most part, and he's a fantastic looking figure, and he scales beautifully with Marvel Legends. He's actually a little small by Marvel Select standards. So this is my comic Hulkbuster. I'm going to go ahead and rank him as part of this video because why not? It's my video and I'm going to do it the way I want to do it. We have a different ranking system here. We have S for Stark tier. We have A for the Avengers tier. We've got our B tier, our C tier, and then we have our D tier, our defective tier. Taking into account my feelings on this figure versus what's come before and what came after him, I think that if you could only get one Hulkbuster figure, this is still a pretty good one. Now, he's not going to pose super dynamically, but he looks the part. Just a fantastic figure, and Hasbro basically completely remade him a year or two ago. So with that in mind, I think that while probably the Hasbro effort is a little bit better despite the lack of metallic paint, I still think this is a pretty strong Hulkbuster figure, and I'm going to stick him all the way in A tier. Next up, we're going to go back to the beginning. Let's take a look at the original Iron Man figure from Series 1 by Toy Biz. This was a revolutionary figure at the time for a new figure line. The amount of articulation he's got, his fingers move, his toes move. He has, waist and diaphragm articulation. They even went so far as to give him a removable mask, so you can actually see the Tony Stark face underneath, which was a great touch, and that mask connects back on. This is the Series 1 classic Iron Man figure. Now, this was not the only version of this figure we got back in the era. Toy Biz loved their variants and repaints, so we ended up getting a gold version, a stealth version, and a version that was this figure but didn't come with a comic book and came with a cardboard mini poster instead. So a great way to get the line kicked off. Here we are over 20 years later. This figure established a lot, and his mold was eventually reused for a War Machine and even Magneto of all characters. But by today's standards, he is a little bulky looking. His, got the pins visible in his joints. We don't really need finger and toe articulation in our Iron Man figures these days. He shows his age a little bit. I'm going to have to stick him, at this point, I'm going to stick him in C tier. But he is important to the history of the line. You know what? We're going to go through enough Iron Man on this list. I'm going to stick him down in D tier. Important to the history of the line, but he has effectively been replaced. So speaking of other classic Iron Man figures, let's go to this guy. This is the second time Hasbro attempted to give us the classic Iron Man armor. This version came in the Iron Man 3 Marvel Legends line. He had two different head sculpts, and he had this metallic gold paint applied to his body. The first time they made this figure, he was in a 2-pack, I believe, with Maria Hill, and he had a flatter yellow color. This guy's proportions are a bit wonky, even for the day. He was a very skinny looking Iron Man, And as you can see here, he's not as posable as I think Hasbro had hoped he would be, and he's got those really ugly ball joints. But most importantly, he just doesn't scale well at this point. He's very clearly been replaced by some other figures that we're going to see on this list. So I'm going to place this guy in D tier as well. He's just not something you need in your collection unless you're a completionist. Next up, let's take a look at the figure that actually replaced both of those guys by Hasbro. We've got the 80 Years Iron Man figure. This figure was really special when he came out. He had the gold paint on his body. He had the proper proportions. He doesn't have a removable mask like the Toy Biz version had, but he does have an alternate head sculpt. And we got this classic looking Tony Stark head, which was really nice. He also came with an alternate helmet, which was inspired by the artwork of artist Alex Ross. And I believe this might even be the head that was packaged on the figure when you got him. But I prefer to have this more traditional looking Iron Man mask. He had some repulsor blast. Fantastic figure. Great for his day as part of the 80 Years line. The only problem he had really was that his arms were sent out of the factory flipped incorrect. So as you'll see in the photos here, he originally had his biceps on the wrong arms. Thankfully, I was able to heat this figure with hot water, get those arms switched out, and now my Iron Man looks the way he was supposed to look out of the factory. So sometimes a drag when we have to do that as collectors ourselves, but despite that flaw, this was still a really important Iron Man figure to the line. And I think if I was going to rank him, I think I'm going to go ahead and put him in A tier. He had some really cool accessories, but I did have to fix him myself. And there's some other Iron Man armors I actually like better than that classic armor. Moving on, we did get a variation of that armor not too long after it came out. We have the AI Iron Man figure. So you can see it's the same mold as the 80 Years Iron Man figure. They've colored it more in classic candy coat colors, kind of a flatter, more comic poppy kind of color scheme. Pretty cool figure, and he also came with an alternate head, so you can make him the AI hologram Tony Stark inside the suit. This figure is cool for its moment in time, and if you're looking for a classic Iron Man, I would say the 80 Years is fine, but I like the more comic-inspired coloring of this figure, even if the Unibeam port on the chest is blue and not gold. I say he's still a B tier worthy figure. Next, we got the Stealth Iron Man figure. This was a really cool figure to get single carded. Over the years, we did get a stealth version of the Extremis Armor and a few other stealth Iron Man figures, but they were always chase or variant figures and not the basic figure. What I liked about this figure at the time that he came out was that he was single carded and easily obtainable. For the first time ever, a stealth Iron Man was easy to get, and he came with an alternate Tony Stark head. So you see here, very similar to the one that we got with the 80 Years figure, this Iron Man also came with that head. So I really like this figure a lot. I'm going to go ahead and stick him in A tier. Next, Hasbro kind of rewrote the game with this mold. We've missed a lot of earlier Iron Man figures. We're kind of jumping a little modern, but once they got this 80 Years mold designed, they started applying its proportions and pieces to other Iron Man figures, and that's what we're seeing with this figure right here. This Iron Man was part of the retro card Iron Man wave. It's based on the Model 9 armor or the Model 10 armor. They were very similar to each other. What I like about this guy is that he was the first Iron Man, at least I think he was, to come with these kind of smoky effects for after his repulsors have fired. I thought that was a nice touch. I like this suit. To me, this is my ideal classic Iron Man armor. I think he's a fun figure. He didn't have the Tony Stark head this time, but if you're looking to get an Iron Man figure, and this is the only one you can get, you can't go wrong with this guy. I think he's got some really cool parts. All that said, I do think I would put him in B tier because for a lot of people, this probably isn't your most iconic version of Iron Man, but I really like him a lot. Sticking with the reused parts from the 80 Years Iron Man, we have the Silver Centurion Iron Man. This was a Walgreens exclusive, and he came with some great blast effects. I think the first time we saw them in sort of a lime yellowish color. But a fun Iron Man figure, and of course classic, important to the 80s. For a lot of people, this is a definitive Iron Man look, and it is for me too when I think about the history of the armor. There are two versions of this figure. There's the one with the metallic silver from Walgreens, and then there's one that was in a 5-pack, an Avengers West Coast 5-pack that has more of a white colored plastic instead of silver. If I had my pick, I think I'd actually prefer that white one. To me, it looks more comic inspired, but this silver one is still pretty nice. And because of its nature and the history of the Iron Man books, I think he belongs. Oh, let's put him in A tier. Iron Man had a strong finish to the 80s, so I think he deserves to be an A tier. Next up, let's take a look at this figure. This is the Heroes Return Iron Man from the late 90s. There had been a reset of continuity. Iron Man was a child in an armor suit at some point in the 90s, and then they undid all of that. And when Iron Man got back to being normal, this is the suit that he was wearing headed into the millennium. This is a great execution of that suit, done very well. The proportions are nice. He's sculpted well. He's a pretty decent Iron Man figure, but I struggle to find somebody who's looking for this as their iconic Iron Man. Because of that, I'm going to go ahead and stick him in B tier. He's not bad. He's just not everybody's probably preferred look for Iron Man. Not an essential piece of your collection, but if you're building up a Hall of Armor, he looks great among the spread. Next, we have an Iron Man that's not Tony Stark. This is Arno Stark from an alternate future in the distant year 2020. Can you believe we're already well past that now? This Iron Man, of course, again, is the 80 years Iron Man mold. He's got the gold paint on his body. He's got some custom parts on the shoulders to add that sort of gear look. He's a fine enough Iron Man figure. I just don't know that he was one that people were really asking for, but I do appreciate the cheekiness of Hasbro releasing him as a Walgreens exclusive in the year 2020. If you can only get one Iron Man figure, this one's not even Tony, so you're probably going to want to skip it. I think it's fine for what it is, so we're going to go ahead and stick him in B tier. Next up, we have another more modern Iron Man figure. This was based off of a suit of armor that was Tony getting back to basics in the comics. I like the look of this suit a lot. I do believe it was adapted from a concept by Alex Ross, and it's a great Iron Man figure. It came with accessories to plug onto his hands. I don't think we got a Tony head with this one either. Again, not somebody's probably perfect look for Iron Man, not a suit that people probably think of very often. I don't even think he's wearing this or has worn this for a while in the comics, but it's still sculpted very nicely. I mean, a paint wash would be nice, but it's got the white on all of his energy ports, I guess, or light disc. And yeah, it's still a fun figure. I'm going to stick him in B tier. Next, we're going to take a look at this guy, part of the Iron Man 3 line of Marvel Legends figures. This is the Bleeding Edge armor. This is a suit that came around the time that the Iron Man movies first took off in theaters, and they were trying to adapt elements of the movies into the comics. This Iron Man figure was sculpted from the ground up for this suit of armor, but by today's standards, I mean, the joints aren't that great. He's actually a little bit gummy feeling. They didn't do as good of a paint job as they could have. He's got all of these blue dots on his body that are supposed to be light sources, but you know, I've seen enough customizers online add just simple dots of white paint onto the figure, and it makes it look so much better. Kind of like how his eyes look. That effect people can apply themselves. I wish Hasbro would have done that on the figure too. Again, this is a suit of armor that he hasn't really worn in a very long time. The proportions are a little wonky. If you can only get one Iron Man figure, you're probably going to want to pass on this one. And since this guy's showing his age a little bit, I'm going to go ahead and stick him in C tier. Next, let's jump into the MCU. So this was not in the Marvel Legends line proper. This was part of the Iron Man 1 movie line. This figure, sculpted from the ground up, looks pretty decent. However, scale-wise, it does not mesh well with most of your figures in your collection. Hasbro underscaled him a little bit, and he's got an action feature on his arm that might detract for some people. He normally has a long missile you stick in there, and it just flicks out. So that may not be everyone's cup of tea. It would have been nice if the mask flipped up. Unfortunately, on this guy, it doesn't. And I do believe Hasbro re-released this figure during the 10-year anniversary of the MCU and the Marvel Legends line and didn't change the figure at all. I think they still kept it this same scale. I like having this figure for the history and what he means to the MCU and to Iron Man's popularity in general. But if you're not collecting MCU figures, this isn't the true Mark 1 to you. Despite the nice sculpting, I think he's kind of a skippable figure. Hopefully at some point Hasbro revisits him and makes him in the proper scale. But for now, I think he belongs in... was about to put him in B tier, but the scaling really is making me think. Let's put him in C tier. All right, guys, we're going to move on to the actual Mark 1 armor. This is part of the 60 years of Avengers anniversary line. This was a fantastic figure. He came single-carded. I believe he might have been retailer exclusive, but a really nice Iron Man figure. He had some extra hands. I don't believe he had a Tony head packed in with him. But, you know, if you're building out your Hall of Armor, you've got to have the first model. And this is actually sculpted really nicely to represent what the first armor looked like in the comics. It does look a little basic, but hey, we were coming out of the 1950s when this guy was thought up. I like the paint detail that he has on the light on his chest. And he's got some nice scratch detail around the figure. So, you know, Hasbro at least tried to break up the look a little bit. Despite how basic he is, I love the retro 1950s look to the figure. For me, and it's my list, I think I'm going to kind of put him in A tier. There's something about his out-of-time look at this point that I really, really like. Next, let's take a look at another Walgreens exclusive. Man, Iron Man had a lot of those. This is the infamous Iron Man figure. This figure came with accessories, blast accessories. It came with a Victor Von Doom head, which was a great inclusion. And the figure itself is actually painted pretty well. Now, it is a repaint of the Invincible Iron Man figure, I think a lot of people call it. That was part of the Black Panther movie wave. But this is another Iron Man drawn straight from the comics. I believe it was post-Axis, right? When Doom was trying to be good and possibly at the same time as Superior Iron Man. The only problem I have with this figure is that Hasbro loves their plastic capes. I wish we had something a little bit softer so he was easier to pose around. But for a second go with this sculpt, I think Hasbro did a really good job. Their first attempt of this figure, which sadly I don't have and won't appear on this list, was also a really good figure. But I think they gave us all of the right accessories. I think this figure was done very well. It is a unique armor. It's not an iconic Iron Man, but and probably one you can skip. You know, I was leaning towards A, but they did well by us on the accessories, I gotta say. But this is probably an Iron Man that you don't need. As I think about it, the sculpting's really nice. I'm tempted to put him in C tier, but let's go ahead and put him in B tier. Next, we are going to look at the Iron Man. That was the modern look for the character in the early 2000s, around Avengers Disassembled. I forget what the model number of this suit is, but just before Extremis, this is what Tony was wearing. And this is a suit that's very complicated as far as the design goes. I'm sure it was a nightmare for the artist to draw. It has a lot of different details with fins and paneling, but it's captured very, very well on this Iron Man figure. And I do think for a lot of people, this is the Iron Man they think of, at least if they're thinking of the early 2000s, much in the same way you think of the 80s and you think of the Silver Centurion. I think in the early part of the 2000s, this was the Iron Man that you probably thought of. He had a lot of merchandise. Certainly back in that time period, you could find school supplies with this version of Iron Man all over it. So it is an important armor to the history of the character. And because of all of the detail that he's got, I think Hasbro executed pretty well. Again, I'm being picky. A Tony head coming with this guy would have been nice. But I think I want to put this guy in A tier. I do think he's that important to the history of the character, and the execution of the figure I do think was done that well. Next, we're going to take a look at the Marvel Now Iron Man figure. So Tony changed his colors up going into Marvel Now. This Tony has got a Unibeam port that's red. He's got some other red ports or red light discs on his suit. Hasbro did cheap out a little bit on those, just dabbing some red paint on the figure. This is a repaint of I believe the Mark III armor from Iron Man 1. So it is technically an MCU figure repainted to look like a comic book figure, which itself was just the MCU design adapted to the comics and the colors that were changed. We didn't get a Tony head with this one. I don't believe we even had any interchangeable hands. He was part of the Hulkbuster wave, so you were probably buying this figure just to complete your movie Hulkbuster figure. We didn't really get any original sculpting with this guy, and it's a suit that lots of people have probably forgotten about at this point. I think this Iron Man figure we could probably go ahead and put in C tier. Not super necessary for your collection, but a fun color design looking back on the history of the character. Next up, here's an Iron Man figure that most of you probably don't even realize exists. The packaging called this guy the prototype armor. This was part of the Iron Man 1 movie line. Now, proportionally, he doesn't really hold up compared to other figures that have come out since then, especially MCU figures. He looks a little small. But I really, really like this Iron Man figure. I'm a sucker for snap-on armor, and this Iron Man is full of it. He's got a helmet that comes off, and you can see Tony Stark underneath. But then you can easily just put that helmet back on. I think that's a nice touch. The chest plate comes off. There we go. The chest plate comes off as a separate piece. You can see the armor underneath, and even the arc reactor. There's a button on the back of the figure. You can push the arc reactor, the button on the back to make the arc reactor fall out. And you get 2 arc reactors with this figure. Not sure why, because Tony only ever had blue arc reactors in the movie, but you have a yellow one and a blue one that you can actually stick inside the figure. So I think that's a lot of fun. Come on, camera, focus up there. So anyway, I think that's a lot of fun. Also, we have the ability to remove his gauntlets and put on these Tony Stark hands. You can see his shoulder pads also come off. There's lots of different pieces for this guy. He can have his gauntlets off. So this is a really fun Iron Man figure. Again, Hasbro went the distance on this one. You could tell they were excited to work on an Iron Man figure, and they went to task creating an Iron Man that had a ton of interchangeable pieces. While the scaling of this guy doesn't hold up, I like the metallic red paint. I like the extra pieces. This is a fun figure for collectors, or, you know, if you want to get one for your kid. I don't know how you'd find it at this point. They cared with this one. I'm putting this as our first S-tier Iron Man figure. And I know a lot of you guys think I'm crazy, but I do think he deserves it. Next, let's go to video games. So there were 2 Iron Man figures that came out. 3 actually, that came out when Square designed an Avengers video game available for the PlayStation and Xbox 360. I think it was even on PC. This is the second of those figures. It was part of Wave 2 with the Mr. Fix-It Build-A-Figure wave. This is a nice, decent Iron Man figure. It takes some inspiration from the movies. It takes, obviously, inspiration from the game it came from. But it's a nice blue color scheme, which we don't get with Iron Man figures very often. He had some interchangeable hands. He even came with a Tony Stark head, which was a nice inclusion. It looks a little bit like Tom Welling, at least Tom Welling 2025. So a fun figure. Not one that's necessary for your collection, but if you've got it, it's nice to add to your Hall of Armor. I'm going to go ahead and put this guy in... You know what? I like the colors enough. I want to stick him in B tier. Next up, sticking with the video game theme, we have the Midnight Suns Iron Man armor. This is another one inspired by video games, a different one this time, one that was criminally underplayed and underappreciated. If you guys have not played Marvel Midnight Suns, you could probably find it for pretty cheap on any gaming platform of choice. Check it out. It's a turn-based, tactics-style Marvel game. Don't let the words card battler scare you away. That's not what the game is. Long story short, it's fun. There's a lot of deep choices you can make, and the game is infinitely replayable. This Iron Man comes from that game. This is his final suit of armor that you unlock in the game, and it's mostly a redo of the Avengers game Iron Man figures. They really only sculpted a brand new chest plate, shoulder pads, and head sculpt for this guy. Otherwise, he's the exact same figure. So really, from the sternum down, he's not game accurate, but they at least paint him to kind of look like that. I love the game a lot. The figure is a lot of fun. Again, we've got a black and gold Iron Man, which is not something we see that often, but I'm going to go ahead and put this figure in C tier. I think Hasbro could have done more with it to make it truly unique to that game, and they kind of got a little bit lazy. We're about halfway through, guys. How we doing? Take a break, get a snack, grab a drink, but definitely keep going with this video. We're about to see the Disco Armor. So this was part of a 2-pack with the Civil War War Machine figure. This 2-pack was exclusive to Target, and this is an Iron Man suit that many people blinked and missed completely in Iron Man 3. He was part of the House Party Protocols. It was basically just an Age of Ultron War Machine repainted and put into the movie. This figure itself is very much the same thing. Now, the big difference between the actual look of the armor in the movie and the figure itself is they reused the Age of Ultron War Machine chest plate for this figure, when in the movie, his chest plate looked much more like the Mark III armor with a round arc reactor on the chest. So for this figure, they just painted a little white circle in the middle of the rectangle that was normally reserved for the chest light on the War Machine armor. He still has the articulated cannon, which is nice. He's got a fun color scheme, which is why I think Hasbro chose to do him when they were looking at their molds that they could re-release in a 2-pack with a War Machine that was sculpted from the ground up. So Is it a figure that's necessary for your collection? Absolutely not. Is it fun? Sure, if you like bright colors, but I do think this is a pretty skippable Iron Man figure, so I'm going to go ahead and stick him in the D tier. Let's get Ultimate. So, with Hasbro taking over Marvel Legends around 2006 and 2007, they started designing their own figures. They gave us our first Build-A-Figure from Hasbro with Annihilus, and then they attempted to do the Ultimate Iron Man armor. This armor was a choice. We have some ball hips that, don't really allow the figure's legs to move as well as they need to. We're kind of hindered in articulation. The figure doesn't really bend as forward as well as it needs to, and in fact, mine seems completely locked. He's just really awkward to pose. His hands don't hold anything. They're just kind of open in like these, I don't know what position this is. He can't hold any accessories. He can't move his fingers. I do like that Hasbro gave us back metallized plastic. Definitely harkened back to the Toy Biz Iron Man animated series figure, so that was a nice touch. And the pieces are even removable if you want to, and you can stick them back on. So you get a little bit of playability with these. And the helmet comes off, so you can see the Tony Stark head sculpt underneath. But, overall, this figure has not aged very well at all. If you're a fan of Ultimate Iron Man, you actually have a better option. So I'm going to go ahead and put this guy in D tier. I acknowledge that Hasbro tried to have fun, but the execution didn't quite work. This execution, however, worked extremely well. Here is the comic book wave Ultimate Iron Man armor that we just got at the start of 2025. This figure is fantastic. He had interchangeable hands. He had some blast effects. I don't know about skipping out on a Build-A-Figure piece and just giving us a mini comic book. I don't have that comic book handy. I think that was a bit of a bummer, and I would have loved an Ultimate Tony Stark head with this figure. But it is sculpted from the ground up. They did make an effort with this figure. He is fun. He's pretty posable for how bulky he looks. I like him a lot. Even though we don't have a Tony head, I'm going to put this guy in A tier. Scratch that. You guys are going to think I'm crazy. I like this figure so much, I'm sticking him in S tier. Again, wish he had a Tony head, but I do think Hasbro actually tried, and I think that's a good Iron Man figure. You guys should check it out. Even if you're not a fan of Ultimate Iron Man, check out that figure. Next, let's turn our attention to Civil War. Here we have the Civil War Iron Man figure. I believe this is part of the Giant Man wave. This was the suit that was the standard suit in that movie. It came with some interchangeable hands and some blast effects. It's not as posable as I would like, which is unfortunate because Hasbro ended up using the suit a couple more times. But it is, it represents the movie it came from. And if you're a fan of Civil War, this is the Iron Man you want to add to your collection. I think I want to go ahead and put this guy in... I'm going to stick him in C tier. The red isn't quite as movie accurate as it needs to be. Again, the posability is really affecting my enjoyment of it. I think C tier is fair for that figure. And while we're talking about Civil War Iron Man, let's talk about his first immediate re-release. This was the Civil War Iron Man that came in a 3-pack with Captain America and our first MCU Spider-Man figure. The difference here is this Iron Man is battle damaged. You can tell because they've messed him up there with some black graded paint on the figure. So they didn't actually sculpt any new damage into the figure. It's all paint detail, some scratches and whatever. But this figure did give us our first full Tony Stark MCU head sculpt that we'd ever received. Prior to this head coming out, we had the head that was part of the prototype armor over here. We also received a flipped up mask for another Iron Man that we haven't gotten to yet. So if you could only get one Civil War Iron Man armor, you're probably still going to want to go with the standard version, even though it doesn't have the Tony Stark head. But if you've got both, again, it's nice to have that Tony Stark head. So I rate this figure the same as the other Civil War Iron Man. I think it's a C. Hasbro, it's not very posable. I think Hasbro could have done a little more with him. I don't know what I'm looking for, but that's not it. So he's going into C tier for me. Let's do one more look at the Civil War armor, and that is in the form of this hologram Iron Man figure. Not an Iron Man figure that I think anyone expected to see release. It's just a repaint of the Civil War armor with some lines painted on it, but it's molded in a transparent blue plastic. This was honestly just a slot filler in the Build-A-Figure wave that he was a part of. I got this figure because I wanted to finish the Build-A-Figure. I don't know that this is anyone's ideal version of Iron Man. I don't know anyone who's just going to run out there and try to find it on eBay. If you're a fan of translucent figures, you could even do better. And again, the same articulation woes that we had with the Civil War armor are present on this figure. I'm going to actually put this guy, despite how cool he might look, especially if you shine an LED through the back of him, I'm going to go ahead and put this guy in D tier. Next, let's take a look at another MCU figure. This time we've got the Zombie Iron Man figure. This figure is a repaint and reuse of the Iron Man armor from Infinity War. But what I like that they've done with this is they've resculpted him to have exposed bone on his torso. And I believe somewhere else on here, oh yes, he has exposed bone on the back of his arm. Such a subtle bit of detail to pay attention to and try to actually sculpt into the figure, but Hasbro did it. So this guy, you know, great to pull out around Halloween. He doesn't actually come with an Iron Man helmet, which is probably my only gripe about the figure. He does have interchangeable hands. He had repulsor blast. Is this figure necessary to your collection? Absolutely not. But it is a fun figure, and I'm glad that Hasbro actually gave it to us. Despite how bare bones he kind of seems, no pun intended there, I actually think for the fun factor of this figure, I want to stick him in B tier. Next, we're sticking with the MCU, but let's go to Iron Man 2. This figure was not a Marvel Legends. It was part of the Iron Man 2 line, but it is the Mark V/Suitcase Armor. He hasn't aged too well, but he was a really fun figure. He could use some more articulation in the torso, especially. He doesn't have any waist twist. He has this almost like piston-looking ab section on the figure. And you can see that he's got the ball hips, even though they're hidden by the sculpt of the legs. Again, not very posable, but he is the Mark V armor. He is the Suitcase armor for those of us fans of the 90s Iron Man. He is the Suitcase armor in live action form, and they actually gave us the suitcase to go with him, even though the suit will not collapse into a suitcase form. He had multiple interchangeable hands. Some of the paint on this figure is starting to fade with time, which is a little unfortunate. There's not really a lot you can do with that. But still, a novel figure for the era he was released. I'm really hoping we see an updated version of this figure at some point. Right now, again, his paint's fading. He doesn't move very well. He is fun in concept. I don't think he's the must-have Iron Man figure for your collection at this point. So as much as I personally like this figure, I'm going to go ahead and stick him in D tier. We just talked about the Mark V. Let's go ahead and talk about the Mark VI. This is a specific version of the Mark VI armor. This was part of the Avengers, Walmart exclusive Avengers wave of Marvel Legends figures when the Avengers movie was in theaters. It is a repaint of the Mark VI figure that was available in the Iron Man 2 line, the suit that he finished the movie with when he was back-to-back with Rhodey in the Japanese garden. So this figure is different because, again, he has battle damage like we saw in the Civil War figure, and like the Civil War figure, they didn't sculpt any new detail. They just painted the battle damage on the figure, although I do like the lines that have been painted on the figure to kind of indicate that the paint has been scratched. This was, for me, my Avengers movie Iron Man figure because he was part of that line, but for the longest time, this was my MCU figure to replace the prototype armor that I had from the first Iron Man movie. But he's out of scale. He doesn't move as well as he needs to. While I don't think we've received the ultimate version of a Mark VI armor yet, Hasbro has given us the Mark VII and the Mark III. Hopefully they do the same thing with the Mark VI at some point. This figure is okay, but again, out of scale. So I'm going to stick him in C tier. Are you guys ready to go big? Let's go big. Next we have the Build-A-Figure Hulkbuster. This is, of course, the Veronica armor from Age of Ultron. This is the Build-A-Figure version, so it's actually a little bit lighter than that figure, or than that armor, rather, looked in the movie. It's more of a candy apple red versus a sort of deeper maroon or ruby shaded red. Sculpting-wise, it's perfect. Paint-wise, they're missing a few details all around the figure, but it is huge, it is chonky, he's got some weight to him. He's a really great figure. For the time that he came out, this was an impressive Build-A-Figure and still one of the largest ones that Hasbro has done to this point. So he's great. If you can only get one Hulkbuster figure, and this is the only one you can find, then he's still good. I'm going to go ahead and stick this guy in B tier. But Hasbro didn't stop there. They never do they? We had to get a repaint of that guy, and so we did finally end up getting the movie-accurate version of the Hulkbuster. This guy came in a 2-pack with Age of Ultron Hulk. This figure, of course, is a deeper shade of red to match the film more accurately. He's got a lot more painted detail. His neck is silver this time. There's just a lot of different little elements to the figure that makes him movie-accurate and a much more idealized version of the Hulkbuster armor from Age of Ultron. Don't mind the paint scuffs on the face of this figure. That was not from the factory. This was actually a toy for my son. But if you can only get one movie Hulkbuster figure and you've got the option to get this one, this is the better figure. So with that in mind, I'm going to say go ahead and place him in... You know, toy fans, I was about to put this guy in S tier, but he had no additional accessories, no interchangeable hands, no blasts, nothing like that. So for that sin, that action figure sin, we're going to go ahead and put him in A tier. All right, less than 10 Iron Man figures to go. Let's take a look at the Mark 42 armor. So this is the armor from Iron Man 3. Really cool design, I think anyway, but we never actually saw this armor function properly in the movie, as hilarious as that is. So this figure was part of the Iron Man 3 movie line, and, you know, it's sculpted to look like he did in the movie, but he has the same sort of articulation woes that we're dealing with on the Civil War Iron Man figure. He was not that posable. Because of that, I'm going to say, unless you're just really in love with this armor, he really probably deserves to be in the C tier. And look, I'm even having trouble getting this guy to stand at this point. All right, there we go. Let's go ahead and stick him in C tier. While we're discussing that mold, let's bring in the Mark 43 armor. This is from Age of Ultron. This armor is the exact same sculpt as the Mark 42. Paint-wise, they pretty much nailed it. Well, I can't even say that. There's some finer details that they could have hit. But this figure did come with an interchangeable head, which I think was really fun. It actually had the mask flipped up. Reminds us of the days of the MCU when Tony's suit wasn't nanotech and the mask would actually flip up. I miss those days. An okay Iron Man figure for what he was. Again, articulation's a little hindered, but you can't ignore that Tony head, and we don't get those that often with the MCU figures. For that reason, I'm not sure he deserves a B. He's not the most iconic movie armor. I'm going to go ahead and say we stick this guy in C tier as well. Let's go ahead and take a look at an Iron Man that may not actually belong on this list, but I'm sticking him here. We have the Civil Warrior from Contest of Champions. This is an Iron Man figure where Hasbro actually sculpted some new pieces for the head, the torso, and the upper legs. They did end up reusing those on a Hydra Iron Man a few years later. He also reuses the arms and lower legs from the Udon Taskmaster figure. This Iron Man's fun, but, you know, for most people, this is probably a skippable figure. I honestly only bought this figure so I could complete the Build-A-Figure, the Dr. Hyde Build-A-Figure that was part of the wave, but I don't mind having him as part of my collection. I did play Contest of Champions at one point. I appreciate the sculpted detail on the back of the shield, as well as the way the shield looks on the front. Hasbro actually had some fun with this, making it look battle damaged. We got some different color variation there in the arc reactor on the shield. This is not an essential Iron Man figure, though, and the posability could be better, so I'm going to go ahead and stick him in C tier. Let's move on to the Iron Patriot. Again, not a Tony, but also not a Rhodey. This is, of course, Norman Osborn wearing a repainted version of the Extremis Armor, and that's where this figure gets its inspiration from. There was an Extremis Armor that was part of the Terrax Build-A-Figure wave. I used to have that figure. I don't any longer for a reason you'll see coming up. But this is the first version of Iron Patriot that we received. Kind of, sort of, still an Iron Man figure in his own right, but it has not aged too well. He's actually pretty loose in the ankles, too. He's kind of hard to stand right now. But his proportions are slightly off. We didn't get an unmasked head with him. At this point, because of a 3-pack, Cabal Marvel Legends 3-pack that gives you a better version of Iron Patriot, at this point, he belongs in D tier. And now for the reason that I got rid of my original Extremis Armor figure, we have Hasbro's second attempt at giving us the Extremis Armor, and I think this turned out very nicely. I would have liked an alternate head, and wouldn't you know it, we're about to get an alternate head with their third version of this figure coming out with Mandarin, either at the end of this year or early next year. Would have liked that with this figure the first time around. I think this guy's great. You might be able to pick him up on sale next year. And if you do, he's a good figure. But knowing that 2-pack's coming, I can't ignore that. So I'm going to go ahead and stick this Extremis Armor, which I really like, in B tier. That's fair, right? Next, let's talk about Endgame. There is a 2-pack out there that has in-game Iron Man with Thanos. It is a fantastic 2-pack. We get Iron Man in his the last armor we ever saw him in. He's got a snapping hand with the Infinity Stones worked into it. He also comes with some great Robert Downey Jr. Tony Stark head sculpts. One that's battle damaged and one that's just a plain face. Great heads. Little weird that they connect at the neck peg, like the lower neck peg. But when they're in the figure, they look fantastic. This Iron Man also came with tons of interchangeable hands and a shield and his energy sword. Hasbro went the distance on this figure. If you can only buy one Iron Man figure, especially if you're a fan of the movies, this is the Iron Man you want to get at this point. This is a fantastic figure. I'm very impressed with it. This is another recipient of the Stark tier. All right, home stretch. Let's take a look at the modular Iron Man. I know you guys have been waiting for this one. Here he is, modular Iron Man. What, this wasn't the one you guys had in mind? That's because this is the Toy Biz modular Iron Man from the Face Off series that came packed with a comic book Mandarin figure. When this figure released, I was super excited to get him in 6-inch figure scale, but man, his proportions are wild. He's really skinny. Look at those knobby hips. He has trouble standing at this point because all Toy Biz Marvel Legends pretty much get loose joints after a couple of years. But he was important at the time, and if you grew up on the 90s Iron Man cartoon like I did, this was a figure that you had to have in your collection for a time. But this guy hasn't aged well. I will say, Toy Biz in their infinite wisdom did give us the ability to remove his head. My Iron Man has an especially long eyebrow for some reason, but still a really cool feature that Hasbro has not really done since the Ultimate Iron Man figure that we looked at earlier in this list. This figure you don't need, guys. Not going to beat around the bush. You don't need him. He hasn't aged well. He definitely belongs in the D tier. But good news, because Hasbro gave us an update. In the Ursa Major Wave, we got this modular Iron Man figure. He's got some nice metallic gold on his body. He's got some nice metallic red. He came with interchangeable hands. He was almost everything we could have hoped for, but he didn't have a Tony Stark head. And as cool as these metallic looking colors were, at least for many of us, we think about this armor being from the 90s Iron Man cartoon or even the Marvel vs. Capcom game series. And neither of those interpretations of the character had metallic coloring. So once we saw this figure, we liked it, but we knew we wanted something just a little extra. With that in mind, as cool as this figure is, as much as I'm wearing my heart on my sleeve for this armor design, I'm going to say this Tony belongs in A tier. Hasbro executed the design really well, but they could have done a little bit more, and the good news is they eventually did. We got the retro-carded modular Iron Man figure in that candy apple red with that runts banana-looking yellow for the yellow pieces. This is the modular Iron Man figure that I wanted when the Ursa Major Wave figure came out. And the best part, they went to town on the accessories. Not only did we get the standard head with the 90s original helmet design, we got the Ursa Major helmet that was also accurate to the 90s in Marvel vs. Capcom as a second helmet option. And on top of that, we got Tony Stark with his beautiful mullet, as you saw in Season 2 of Iron Man the Animated Series. But it didn't stop there. We got a proton cannon with blast effects. We also got an attachable piece for his unibeam so that it can flash just like it does in the game. Snaps right onto the shape. There we go. And they gave us this light pulsing effect for when Iron Man celebrates a victory in the game. They went the distance on this figure. Not only is this my favorite Iron Man armor of all time, but they gave us everything we could possibly want with the figure. Count me impressed. Of course, this figure is going into Stark tier. He is one of the ultimate Iron Man figures available for you to add to your collection. Toy fans, I have a terrible injustice that I need to address at this point in the video. I did not talk about Ironheart Riri Williams. True, she is not a Tony Stark. True, she is not an Iron Man. But, I mean, look at her. She is essentially an Iron Man figure. This is a fantastic Iron Man figure. She's got great articulation. She has no pins visible. She moves really well. She's got blast hands and alternate hands. And she comes with a fantastic Riri Williams head sculpt. She should have been part of my Iron Man countdown, because when are we going to get a chance to do a tier list for Riri Williams? Really, she's got 2 legends, and that might be it for the history of the character. This is a fantastic figure. It's going to ruffle some feathers, but I think she deserves to be in Stark tier. She is that great. And there's one other thing I'd like to do. I finished filming, and my son was talking to me about my selections, and he talked me into moving this Iron Man into A tier. And you know what? I'm proud to do it. It's a good figure. Again, proportionally, he's got those cool smoke effects on his hands. I think I'm going to go ahead and put him in A tier. I think I was a little harsh because he didn't come with a Tony head, but he's going into A tier. So there we have it, toy fans. That's my ranking of Iron Man figures. What would you guys change? Which figure were you guys hoping to see on this list? Which one do you wish I still would have been able to add to this list? Who is your S tier Iron Man figure? Let me know in the comments below, but in the meantime, thanks for joining me, guys. If you want to keep up with me, look for me on X, Instagram, and Threads at D21Beast, and I'll see you guys next time.